offer you perhaps a different perspective of this case. As you know, the Clark County Grand Jury heard testimony over a number of days. The prosecution put on witnesses. We were allowed to put on a couple of our experts, as well as testimony from Officer Bookman. Last night, the Clark County Grand Jury declined to indict Officer Alex Bookman on murder charges. And so at the end of this presentation, we'll answer as many or all of your questions that we have answers to. And so if you would be kind enough to hold your questions until the end. And President Steve Grammas would like to have a few comments.
All right, good morning, everybody. As David said, President Steve Grammas, S-T-E-V-E-G-R-A-M-M-A-S. Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for coming out today. This is something that has weighed heavily on our community, on our police department, and our association since last year. And through this process, we felt it was super important to get more information out. As you all are aware, the grand jury proceedings are secretive, and so the things going on in there are not released to the public. I am very happy that we have David Roger as our general counsel. David Roger has been a part of this on our side with helping Officer Bookman through this entire process, as well as the rest of our executive board. And so with David's blessing on this topic, because he's been in the limelight so many times as the former district attorney, we thought it important to let the public know from our perspective more about this case. And that's why we're so happy you all came here today. David's going to do an amazing presentation that I really think is going to give a lot of clarity to folks. And like he said, we'll take questions at the end. So again, thank you so much for coming. Please grab your packets so that you have some more information from us. And I will turn it over to David.
Thank you. At the outset, I want to make clear that this is not a victory lap. This is a somber time. Obviously, Mr. Durham's daughter has lost a father, and that's not lost on us. We have empathy for her. Officer Bookman, we notified Officer Bookman last night about the indictment. He's certainly relieved that he's not going to be charged with murder. However, that's not the end of this for him. It'll be a long process. There will be a number of administrative hearings that Officer Bookman will go through that'll scrutinize his actions that evening. Mr. Durham's family has filed a civil lawsuit against Officer Bookman personally, so he'll have many days in federal court dealing with this, but he's certainly relieved today. And so the evidence that I want to present to you is evidence that some of you may not know. And you know, the department has a 72-hour hearing. They present you a kind of a synopsis of their investigation at the time, but there are a lot of things that unfold that continue throughout the investigation, and this is some of the evidence that was presented. So the parties, obviously you don't need any reminder. Brandon Durham is the decedent. Alejandro Boudreaux was his former girlfriend and who was involved in this, and of course Officer Alex Bookman. At the outset, and please understand, I'm not preaching, but I'm offering you some thoughts about different issues. And what I think is important, at least to us, is that there is a difference between civil liability and criminal liability. And there are times when those two things become meshed together. And civil liability is a civil lawsuit where people want money. And there is a different burden of proof and different courts that hear those cases. The Durham family has filed a civil lawsuit. They're asking for money. Criminal responsibility is a little different, and there's a higher burden of proof. Criminal responsibility deals with the potential loss of a person's liberty. There's a higher burden of proof. And I want to kind of give you an example, and that is federal law dealing with civil rights. Everybody's heard about civil rights lawsuits. It is 42 USC 1983, and we hear about that cause of action, that litigation in use of force cases, and that is one of the charges I'm sure that the family has filed against Officer Bookman, and this deals with excessive force. Not always, but in this case it will. And the U.S. Supreme Court has defined what the plaintiffs have to prove, and they have to prove that Officer Bookman's conduct was objectively unreasonable. Stated differently, an objectively reasonable officer under the same circumstances would have done something different. And that's kind of a generic view of the 1983 action. The parallel criminal civil rights statute has similar language. However, because it is a crime, the standard is different, and there has to be some showing of criminal intent on the officer. And that is the thing that distinguishes civil cases from criminal cases. It's that there is some criminal intent. And the courts have said that with respect to the Civil Rights Act, not only does a plaintiff have to show that an officer's conduct was objectively unreasonable, but because it's a crime, they have to show that the officer specifically intended to use excessive force. And so we hear so often, police officers are never charged, never convicted of crimes, and that is because officers are doing their job. We may disagree with their tactics, how they perform their job, but officers don't put on their badge and decide that they're going to go out and kill someone today. And so that is the difference. In a criminal case, you have to show not only that there is a killing, but that the officer had criminal intent. And that has been our position all along. People can debate on whether Officer Bookman's tactics were appropriate, but what we believe is indisputable is that Officer Bookman was doing his job and he did not have criminal intent. And that was the focus of this criminal grand jury investigation. Did Officer Bookman commit murder when he used deadly force? These are the statutes that the grand jury presumably was instructed on, and we say that because we weren't in the grand jury room, but when Officer Bookman was given notice that he was going to face an indictment, these were the charges, and it was murder. And the statute defines murder as the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. That is the criminal intent. That is the unlawfulness. That's what a grand jury had to consider over the last couple of months. Did Officer Bookman, was his use of force unlawful? Did he have malice in his heart, or was he doing his job? And the grand jury answered that question in the negative. They concluded that there was insufficient evidence that Officer Bookman committed murder. And that is what the criminal charges are all about. Here's another statute that talks about justifiable homicide by a peace officer. The statute says homicide is justifiable by a peace officer when it is necessary to protect against an imminent threat to life of a person. There has been some discussion about whether Officer Bookman shot the wrong person. There's been a lot of talk about the red hoodie, and we're going to talk about that later in this presentation. But from Officer Bookman's perspective, when he told Mr. Durham to drop the knife, Mr. Durham posed a threat to his girlfriend. And in those seconds in which Officer Bookman had to make this decision, he believed that Mr. Durham was the aggressor. But make no mistake about it, whether you believe that Officer Bookman shot the wrong person or you believe that Officer Bookman truly believed that Mr. Durham was the aggressor. The issue for the grand jury, a criminal grand jury, is whether Officer Bookman had criminal intent. And from our perspective, whether you believe that he shot the wrong person or you believe that he shot the aggressor, he didn't have criminal intent. And that's what the grand jury has been focused on. And you know, there will be a lot of discussion, there will be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking about what Officer Bookman did in those 2 seconds, but that will occur in a civil lawsuit. I want to talk about domestic